Very good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everybody on this very interesting topic of webinar. We're talking about digital product engineering. We're talking about things which are happening in our day-to-day life with regards to technology and business. And towards that, we have two eminent panelists with us. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Mr. Chinmay Devadar. He's an experienced entrepreneur in the healthcare technology domain, having worked on several projects and startups since 2010. He has spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley, Germany, and in India. Co-founder of two companies, Prolion Innovation Labs in Pune and IO Life Sciences UG in Hanover, Germany. He's from IIT Madras, Chennai, earned his BTech and MTech degrees there, followed by a fellowship program with Stanford University in California, and which is a combination between Stanford University, California and AIMS, New Delhi. He has several patents to his name and has commercialized one of his surgical robotics domain with Intuitive Surgical Inc. He's won several awards, including the MIT Top India Innovator Under 35 Award and the Maratha Chamber of Commerce Innovation Award. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Chinmay Devadar, one of the distinguished panelists for the webinar today. My second panelist is again a well-known face for the GS Lab GAVS enterprise, Mandar Gadre. He heads our MedTech and IoT group at GS Lab GAVS, providing end-to-end solutions for healthcare and manufacturing verticals. Founded Conviva Tech before a multidisciplinary team implementing IoT solutions for the animal husbandry sector, manufacturing and process industries. He's worked with View Inc. USA, developing pioneer electrochromic technology and helped it scale to produce high-volume architectural EC glass. He holds a BTech in material science from IIT Bombay, so we have both IITians on the call today, and a PhD in nanotechnology from Arizona State University. Have been working with Mandar for quite some time, and really happy to have him participate as a panelist in this webinar. And briefly, myself, my name is Balaji Uppili, Chief Operating Officer for GS Lab GAVS. I've been with the company for about 12 years now and based in Chennai, and really welcome you all to this wonderful webinar on digital product engineering. And just to set the context, I'm sure all of you have heard about this quite a bit in terms of what is digital product engineering. But let's ask the eminent speakers, what is the concept of digital product engineering? People talk of digital, people talk of engineering, and especially in product engineering. Let me go to Mr. Chinmay first. According to you, what constitutes digital product engineering or digital transformation journey per se? And your few words about what is your experience being, Chinmay?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Balaji, for the kind introduction and also inviting me for this webinar. Real pleasure to join you all. And so talking about digital product engineering, since our focus has really been on healthcare and personally for me as well for last almost a decade now, it really means how do we leverage the latest technologies to help patients? And that may be sensors, leveraging, collecting a lot of data for the patients, and then having that available to physicians. And that has been the cutting edge of healthcare technology, as we all know. Usually it's a little bit lagging in healthcare compared to other domains. And we see the same technologies that we see in household or normal commercial areas come into healthcare a couple of years later. So we have that kind of a head start to see, but then it's really a marriage between where is the clinical need and how we can really fulfill that with what technology is currently available. And that's really what it has meant to us for quite some time now.
Interesting. And I think you very well brought the combination of the domain into the digital product engineering, right? Digital engineering part, how it helps in the clinical management, how it helps in the healthcare sector. If I extend that further, Mandar, you come with a background of quite specialization in very niche areas of IoT and more to do with devices and others. And that again plays a huge role in the healthcare industry and in the digital engineering journey, which people are drawing out to be. If you narrow it down further from what Chinmay said, and you bring it down towards a device-based initiative or a project or a solution, what according to you then crystallizes this whole digital engineering all about?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. So I think in a nutshell, for me, it's the 0 to 1 journey of a product. So what I mean by that is, let's take an example of a healthcare medical device. the idea may have generated from somebody who knows the domain. It could be a physician himself or herself. It could be somebody working in pharma, whichever. And then they realize that, okay, as Chinmay rightly pointed out, technology needs to be leveraged to make this product. But how do we take it from that concept level through the journey of a proof of concept at the core, then building a prototype around it, then actually making it a minimum viable product which can be given to the first set of users. So that sort of that 0 to 1 journey, it is truly one critical factor, or as you are saying, a defining factor of digital product engineering as far as we have seen. And it's a very interesting journey. It's like a birthing a new thing, right? You're bringing it to life, something which is there in a PPT deck or in a PDF file. You're trying to now create that device, and as Chinmay said, you're leveraging whatever technology is available to you, and we can delve into some of those aspects. But to me, really, that 0 to 1 journey and that mentality, the mentality of tinkering with various things, initially a little bit having a technology agnostic approach, even if it means that, which is okay, because you're steadfastly focused on what the problem that needs to be solved, and then slowly bringing in your technical expertise. So that sort of sums up for me.
Understand. Very well said. So if I take from what Chinmay you have said and what Mandar you have alluded to, the next question which comes up to me as an output from what you just said is the leading question which comes to me is digital engineering a technology problem, or is it beyond technology? People think that writing a microservices program or moving to the cloud automatically means it is digital transformation. But is it beyond technology? And if so, what, according to you, what are the areas does it touch? And what are things that need to be considered when you embark on a digital engineering journey? Chinmay, what has your experience been?
Yeah, so I mean, technology always keeps evolving, right? And it's more about seeing what is the current technology that is available, but then a little bit alluding to what Mandar was saying earlier, it's also ensuring that we are really using the appropriate technology. I mean, just because something is there doesn't mean it needs to be used. It has to be in the relevance and in the context of what does the patient really require, and what is the clinical need that is defined by the doctors, and what do they really need from in order to make the right diagnosis or in order to provide a certain therapy. And it may not be that it's always the most cutting edge technology that's the most relevant. It may be some of the older things that are also equally useful, and you can just go ahead with that.
Very nice. So it's beyond technology. So technology does play a key role, but is very well beyond technology. And does it also apply similarly, Mandar, in your concept of IoT, your devices, and the 0 to 1 you talked about? Do you see that going beyond technology? Do you see it embarking into newer horizons of how people view the outputs to be? What has been your experience?
Definitely. So when I think about it, it's like a three-pronged answer comes to my mind, right? So technology, as we are saying, it's definitely one aspect of it, critical one. But I see it sort of as a customer side, a technology side, and a partnership side. So what I mean by that is there is a story in the mind of the end user that this is my pain problem, or some physician saying that I want to monitor my patients remotely. Let's take it as an example problem. So there is this customer side of things, and I'm sort of lumping together the patient and the doctor because the two of them are actually undergoing that problem, right? Then there is the technology side of things that as we have seen now, many of these solutions need a confluence of multiple enabling technologies. Maybe the little bit earlier 10-year or 20-year-old story was, okay, by and large you needed one piece of tech and you could do it. But now more and more you need a communication backbone, you need some sort of an IoT, so you need maybe a wearable device. You potentially also need, let's say, analyzing the actual video which is going on. So some AI/ML may come in. So that's the technology side of things. And then the third side, which is sort of hidden there, but I'm sort of explicitly spelling out, because when you bring together these technologies, right, your view of looking at these various technology components, because not everything you are going to be able to do yourself also. So there is like a partnership, because all of this is being done in an ecosystem. It's not in some vacuum. And I'm sort of including not just the tech partners, but also the real domain experts into that partnership. So as long as they, play the glue in the right places, and if they sort of, agree on some sort of a philosophy of this digital product engineering, I think that really helps. because that true partnership model means that, as Chinmay was alluding to, if the technology evolves or if we get a different feedback from the first pilot users, they should be in a mode where, they're okay to switch. They are not there necessarily to, push only one tech component or only one way of solving that problem, because they really care about that end user problem, which is that first piece, which is the customer side. So that's
Right.
sort of the three prong. That's how I look at it.
So I think, let's get the audience involved, right? Because there is quite a number of people who have joined the webinar, with you giving the context of what digital engineering is and what typically may get covered in the digital engineering journey or the roadmap. Let's find out from the audience for the first poll question. Does digital transformation really restrict itself to a product transformation, or does it involve business areas as well? And does it go beyond technology? Would love to hear the views of the audience as to what they viewed as what digital product engineering is. Is it only product transformation, or is it only other business areas also get involved as part of the product transformation? The reason why I'm very keen on that is, it actually involves a lot more organizational components of beyond technology, right? Your business stakeholders, your end consumers, your technicians, if you take a hospital, you're looking at multitude of different stakeholders who are going to participate in this transformation. So how do you plan out for that? How do you chart out for that? That's where this poll question is very important. We will now wind this poll question down with the answers from the audience and see what they have to say. And I think in unison, people have said that it is including other business areas as well. It's not just restricted to the product transformation, but has gotten a bigger chunk of activities beyond just technology and product transformation. I think it resonates with what we have been trying to understand, right? Now, I'm trying to peel the onion a little more and find out, what does it go in a mind of a person who's actually embarking on this product engineering, right? Digital product engineering. It throws a lot of things, right? Cloud comes into picture, mobility comes into picture. People talk about user experience, people talk of agility, people talk of performance, scalability, and everybody comes with a new terminology. Now, in your experience, Chinmay, what are the key tenets of what should be a digital product engineering journey? How does it look? What do you need to consider? Technology being one aspect of it. What all do you need to consider as success criteria, if I can use that word loosely, in figuring out whether my digital product engineering journey has been successful? What would some of those be?
Great question. I think from a healthcare standpoint, it's really one target that we have to keep in mind, which is patient benefit. That's it. And how do we make sure that the technology that we are developing, whether it's a product, service, whatever it is, the end goal has to be, how does it improve patient care? How does it lower the cost of patient care? Can we reduce the hospital time? Can we reduce the pain points? Can we enhance the therapy? All of these combined become the patient benefit. And that is truly the driving singular goal of any technology in the healthcare space. And then some of the other factors, they come more secondary, like things like, is this a battery powered device or do we plug it in? What is the size of the battery, size of the device? What type of communication technology are we going to use? So on and so forth. And there are some challenges to all of that when it comes to healthcare. But really the main journey as such is really driven by what are the patients needing, or what's the patient benefit? Maybe not always what the patients really want, but what's in their benefit, in their long-term benefit. And then in a way driven by, are the doctors going to use it, right? And sometimes if it's like a home use device, are the patients going to use it? How is the compliance? What are the human factors associated with that? Because even if some technology works excellently well from a clinical standpoint, a patient, if they don't use it, then it's of no use at all in the end. So that compliance, which involves the human factors, usability, is it easy to use? Is it something they can remember? So on and so forth. Those are things that also come in picture equally well. And they really form those core requirements of having this, to design these things.
Okay, that's a good starting point to look at. So Mandar, with your experience, any other things which you like to add to what Chinmay just said, and any newer things which we need to include or capture as part of the roadmap of the journey?
Definitely, yeah. So I think Chinmay painted the North Star really well. That's where we should always be driving towards. But as a part of the journey, just to unpeel that layer, right? So I think I'll sort of try to bring out two aspects of it. So one is how to think about that journey, because Balaji brought that point out. So I look at the journey as how do I define the the first set of things which I put out as a as my MVP or as my mixture of features, because not every feature is going to be created equal. There are some key core components which are really going to attack that core crux of the pain problem. So first of all, I would even say that in that journey, if somebody is sort of embarking on this, have we really spent that effort in understanding and boiling that crux down? Sometimes I've used this as a test that can I really articulate that problem and say it back to the customer, and they say bingo, you understand. So that could be one step. And then as you go through this journey of you define something which can be built relatively quickly, and without all the bells and whistles, which is okay, but it starts directionally correctly. And then you take the journey through prototype, MVP, version 1.1 sort of a thing. So that's one aspect. Also the other aspect is when, let's say, I'm trying to embark on this journey, a lot of times at the beginning of the journey, what I've seen in customers' eyes is that, to put it transparently, is a bit of confusion, because what happens is they are hearing so many terms that, they are seeing players similar to them. Now there are news articles, tech magazine articles online, etc., that people are doing this, that, automation, AI. So there is a lot of this buzzwords and new tech trends and all of that. So I do understand and acknowledge that a lot of times we also start with a little bit of that confusion, or we see that in the in the client's eyes, or somebody who is embarking on that journey, in their eyes, we do see that. So I think that's where that that partnership focus, as well as what Chinmay defined as the North Star, I think both of them come in handy, because as long as you keep sort of that in perspective, you can get through this initial confusion. You can start to pare down, okay, this is what I'm going to build. There could be other features that somebody may eventually want, but maybe initially that's not what you need. So I think defining your sort of product journey, it can be fairly lean. And I think one hidden aspect there is that the feedback cycle has to be fairly short, because if you build something for 12 months and then you're going to hear back from your real end users, then it's really long, right? And then you can't justify the other business metrics, the so-called ROIs and all. So I think that's hidden in there.
And I think you touched on a very critical element of ROI, and we'll come back to that. There is a question from the audience, which I think is a straightforward one. Let me try to attempt responding to that myself, if possible. What is the difference between digital product engineering and the digital transformation? According to me, the digital product engineering is a subset of your digital transformation journey, right? You may have multiple digital product engineerings to be embarked on to complete your digital transformation journey. So digital product engineering is literally a subset of a larger digital transformation journey. Why I'm saying that is, in one of our customers, they're trying to change the entire supply chain process. Literally, typically in a GPO, you have distributors, you have suppliers, you have the middlemen working to figure out how to help meet the end customers with the distributors and suppliers, right? So there are multiple products which are there in the process steps of the supply chain process. And if I had to do a digital transformation of the entire supply chain process, it would probably mean that I'll have to do some engineering, digital engineering in the individual products which actually constitute the entire process. Right. So the answer, according to me, and you are the expert, so you can correct me or you could add to it, Chinmay and Mandar, is digital product engineering typically becomes a sort of a subset within the digital transformation journey, right? And I'm not meaning it from a capability or quantum perspective. What I'm saying is, if I have to achieve digital transformation in totality, I may have to do multiple digital product engineering initiatives to achieve that. That's how I'm referring to. Chinmay, would you want to add to that, or do you have something different?
So I would, for the journey part of it, I would just put a little anecdote on the feedback loop to what Mandar was alluding to. And this is part of that transformation, right? That when you're implementing a new technology, there is a big difference between what we do in purely software products versus hardware products. And I will just put this with the use of an example, that in software, we have the ability to quickly learn from the users, make few edits, do A/B testing, do some limited launches and learn from that, and then do a final launch. But all of this is really fast. Compared to that, if we add the hardware element to it, then we have that manufacturing cycle, which automatically adds that additional layer. Then when it comes to healthcare, in this whole implementation journey, we also have to take into account the regulatory aspect, because every little change, we also have to get past the regulatory hurdles from whether it's FDA, CE, or also in India, China, elsewhere. And those add their own layers of that feedback loop. And to some extent, implementing these updates or implementing this whole journey makes it a more, in a way, longer process. But then it also makes you think, for every change that you want to make, you better justify it, put enough number of changes together, and then have that roll out. So it adds that different kind of flavor in that sense.
Okay. Mandar, your view?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll sort of also answer Balaji's question. So yes, I do think that overall digital transformation is a big umbrella under which digital product engineering will be there. In fact, there will be probably flavors of so I sort of a little bit hinted at more 0 to 1, the true spirit of innovative product engineering also. But there could be cases under digital overall digital transformation where there may be some sort of product that works, a digital product that works, but it's for whatever reason, either it has been developed on legacy tech stack or tech frameworks, needs to be modernized. There could be cases like that also, and there almost you have to bring in, while something exists, it's not entirely 0 to 1, but you may have to still bring in the type of thought process, because you're going to still attack similar problems of, okay, you have to do technology selection, right? You'll have to do probably architectural transformation. So things like that. So I do agree, it's a subset. And then it also, in those pockets, you may have to bring in digital product engineering thinking, even if some product exists and it needs to be taken through the sort of modernization journey in a way. Yeah.
Understand. Now, if people are to consider the digital transformation either as one big bang project or multitude of smaller projects or smaller product engineering initiatives, want to have two parts of the conversation, right? First one is, what all should they consider as minimum like a template or a checklist of things which need to be captured or considered. And we'll finish that question, and I'll come to the second part of the question, which is a little contra to that part. So, Mandar, if I had to continue with you, what would I have to consider as a classical digital transformation journey's needs? I mean, I'm not trying to put a cookie cutter approach here, but what would be that template look like as minimum things which I need to consider and ensure they are addressed?
Right, definitely. No, I think good, very pertinent point. So in my mind, I think, first of all, at the center will be, a very crisp definition of the problem statement of the user. And around that, which are I would even use the word minimum set of features that we need to develop to even start to prove that, yes, this ensemble of features can start to solve that problem. So at the core, that's the definition as well as the proposed directional solution. And along with, of course, the architectural considerations and the technology choices start coming in. So I think that the user centricity definition of that MVP or the prototype, as you may call it, and then in the light of that, judicious, as Chinmay mentioned, appropriate tech choices. But I'll also bring in that for healthcare, compliance has to be taken, has to be baked into that thought right from the get-go, because it's difficult to bring it in, after the fact. So, I mean, we may call it like a compliance first approach, right? That from the get-go we are thinking about. So while that architecture is being thought about, whether it is related to protecting the patient data, or as Chinmay alluded to, whether it is, getting the class 1, 2, 3 guidelines right for the medical devices and their designs around patient safety and things like that. So I think those would be, so in my mind, just to summarize, user needs, then the corresponding very minimum, very sharp set of features, then the technology choices, and along with that compliance. So that's like a bare minimum list. I mean, I almost can't remove any one from these 4, list of 4.
Chinmay, would you add to anything of what just Mandar said, your perspective or your experience as to what else should we consider as bare minimum for us to embark or at least start off on a digital product engineering journey?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would echo what Mandar was saying, and it definitely always starts with the patient need or the clinician need, and it's driven by what is required from a clinical standpoint, and that drives those high-level user requirements. But then, in order to verify those requirements, we also, especially on the healthcare side, we also always do this patient journey, or have that understanding of directly learning from the patients of how the things are done in the current situation, understanding where the gaps are, and then how we can fulfill those gaps, which then definitely drives the requirements, like a formal set of engineering requirements driven by both clinical and then the technology part of it. The solution itself, that has to have, again, to how Mandar was mentioning, the compliance aspect, because we have these two layers. One is the engineering verification, which really means, is the product doing what we decided the product should do? But then after that, there is also that validation phase, which is technically in healthcare a different term, where does it meet the patient need? Because a physical product may work perfectly, but are the patients able to use it? Do they require a lot of training, or are they going to go out of their way and not be able to use it? And then it's not useful even if the device functions correctly. So there is that verification step, and then there is the validation step at the user level. And then, of course, the regulatory aspects that come into picture. One interesting, maybe another example I can add here is, we often work with startups, also with Mandar, that we have worked before in the past, and all startups, they want to show some new technology, right? They want to differentiate with their competitors. They want to have IP and prove their novelty in the market, and show how different they are from others in there, in order to get their market share. But on the healthcare side, there is that's a double-edged sword, because in order to get regulatory approval and get to the market as soon as you can, you need to show that you are doing exactly what everyone else is doing. So you are no more dangerous, or you're just as safe and efficacious as everybody else. So yeah, give us FDA approval and let us start selling. But on the other hand, you want to market it as, no, but we are much better than them, and this is our innovation, this is our technology. And that's that balancing act that almost all healthcare startups, or any new healthcare technology, has to go through. And sometimes for big companies, it's possible to run that long journey. For startups, they have to take smaller bites first, and then build upon that. So that's not really always, I mean, that's not like like an exact storyline as such, but every startup faces that at some point of time, or every new product faces that eventually.
No, with two of you such experts in this call, I think I'm making it easy for you guys by asking you very simple questions. Now let me dive a little deeper and get to the intensity of the challenges, right? And both of you come with a healthcare background, so you'll be able to relate to this challenge. You know, there are two things which I come across when we talk to customers who are embarking this digital transformation journey. Two important ones. One is, I like to change the wheel of the tires while the flight is in motion, right? I can't stop the flight to change the wheels. So I like to undergo this transformation while I keep the organization running with whatever is existing. That's a big challenge. I mean, especially if it is multi-city, multi-location, multi-clinic, multi-department transformation, you're done with that challenge, right? That's number one. How do you deal with it? The second challenge is, how do you guarantee that you're not putting a patient's life at risk if you're doing some transformation and testing it out? We all know, right? In the cricket parlance, we can play very well in the nets, but the first ball you face in the main pitch is when your real metal comes out. Similarly, we could do as much testing and development and UAT and pre-production and all of that stuff. But when you put it live and it hurts you, if in case it doesn't deliver well, you're actually risking too many things there. How do you anticipate these two challenges, and how do you solve some of these two challenges with some clear examples if you can? And Mandar, I'd like to bring you in, because these devices can go cranky as well, right? With their signals. So how do you handle these two challenges, if at all, in this digital engineering initiative?
Right. So I'll sort of paint a little bit of a metaphorical picture, right? And because that's going to form a basis of that answer.
Right.
So one way to think about that particular product that you are trying to bring out is the following. Let's say I want to build a quote unquote a vehicle. Let's say the world doesn't know what a car is, let's say, right? One way to build it is build the engine first, and because you are, as an engineer, you are wowed by that, right? I mean, you think that that's the heart of the car, and look at what an amazing thing I built. But the user who actually wants to go from point A to point B doesn't sometimes, a lot of times it's not going to appreciate, because he looks at it as, okay, so what? So another guy comes in and he first builds maybe just a skateboard, right? It has 4 wheels, a little board, and you have to push, push on the ground to get you moving. Then he first tests that. Then he builds a bicycle based on that. Okay, now you get a seat, and instead of pushing on the ground, you have the pedals. Then he can build, start to go in the, you get my analogy. Then they start to build the car. So that's one way of smartly looking at, how to make it bite size, how to keep de-risking the things, because I'm going to give the user the skateboard. I'm not even right now claiming that this is the car, but I give them the skateboard. I lower the cost to the patient also of trying it out, and then slowly move towards a cycle, maybe a motorcycle eventually, and then a car potentially, right? While I know the overall vision, but if I immediately give a new user who has no idea what a vehicle is, and I get them to sit in a car, that could be an issue. Of course, a little bit easier said than done, but I think this analogy helps me think about, how to slowly bring it out, get everybody on board, continue to de-risk it. There will be risks. It's not to say that, just because somebody has tried a bicycle, there won't be risk for the car. There will be, but you're evolving along with them. As Chinmay mentioned, you're walking that path with the patient. So this is one part of it. And then the second part of it is, in general, for that de-risking and trying to, change the, change the tire while the vehicle is in motion part of it. I think then technology can really help. Then you would have to do smart architecture behind that, so that it allows you to do it, because there has to be continuous improvement. So can I deploy continuous, right? Can I use newer, because it's a way of thinking, right? CI/CD is a way of thinking. So if I'm able to do that, if I have the right architecture, whether I'm using microservices, can I do something in the background and keep slowly deploying it, every week or every sprint, and not have the whole thing fall down? I think so that's where technology can help. So I think I'll sort of pause there, but I think that's how I look at it.
Well said. Well said. Chinmay, if I extend the same thing, right? Would you have, how early do you involve others in being able to de-risk and make it more viable, make it more transparent, so that you're preempting any potential damages or potential risks? What is your approach? How do you typically figure out when and how to involve people early?
Oh, absolutely. So all the key stakeholders would be involved right from day one in the design process, and especially for a healthcare product, the risk management process involves that allocation of all the possible scenarios that can go wrong, and then the severity of that risk, whether that risk can be, is it possible to identify the risk? What is the effect of that risk, or what is the hazard that runs, what is the hazard that the patients can face because of this? And all of this needs to be vetted by a relevant physician who would be involved in that type of a device actual use. So if it's a cardiac related device, then you have to have a cardiac expert, could be a cardiologist or a heart surgeon or things like that. And that needs to be done right in the beginning of the design process itself, in order to anticipate in some ways, like how Manda was mentioning, that right in the beginning we have to look ahead and see where these pitfalls can occur, and to some extent also build the product in segments, such that when we want to make those changes eventually, or when we know that some changes are going to be required, we already have those plug points in place, so that eventually those edits can be made, and it's not a surprise, or it's not like a complete architecture change from the beginning, but it's those modules are already in place for those edits. I'll give a specific example of how this could be done in, or was in a way done for robotic surgery. So maybe a lot of us would be familiar, and in the audience as well, with keyhole surgery, where traditionally the surgery would happen by completely opening the abdomen, making a big incision, and then you just have all the organs in front of you. But the transformation from that into keyhole surgery happened in parallel, one with manual devices, which were like long laparoscopic tools, and then also with robotic surgery, where robots would controlled by surgeons, but the actual end effectors would be controlled through motors in a much more precise manner. Now, typically in any surgery, you need a whole host of different devices, right? Graspers, scissors, cautery, uh, needle holders, needle drivers, staplers, a whole bunch of things. And the way Intuitive Surgical did this was by creating a platform of their core robot, which in a way became fixed, that you have a basic robot with just the arms and then a surgeon console and everything else. But then the instruments were all separate, and all the instruments would connect to this robot and do the actual surgery. So what they could do was, once the main robot was designed and in the market, they could keep building and improving the instruments, which were just the small end effectors. And that became a much more feasible process to do. And then it also was, they were able to make a whole bunch of different add-ons to that in some sense. So you have like a core platform, and then you start putting add-ons to it. And you can then remove some add-ons if things go wrong and things like that.
Okay, interesting. And I mean, I was anyway planning to come to, there is a question from the audience as well. Two parts, right? Again, to that point, which is an extension of figuring out how to overcome some of these challenges, is how do you figure out what technology to be adopted in this digital product journey? So what do you consider for arriving at that? And more importantly, the question which I like from the audience is that how do you convert existing product and make it digital, right? And the question was more about physical product. I would rather say a product which has got a lot of manual processes to become digital, to make it take a little more better shape of a digital transformation journey. So technology considerations, what would you look at? And how would you even consider something to be converted into digital? If you can answer these two parts of the questions, Chinmay, for you. The first question is, what technology considerations do you actually want to think about when you embark on a digital technology? How do you really consider the technology part?
I think so. Maybe I can answer this also with an help on an example. So let's take an example of a simple medical instrument, right? A stethoscope, for instance. We are all familiar, the symbol for doctors and healthcare is a stethoscope. And doctors can listen to the heart by putting the device in their ears, and then the other part is on your chest. Now, one example of that is, now in last couple of years, people have come up with digital stethoscopes. So instead of having the doctor physically hear what the tone is, you just put a device on the patient's chest. It already has a diaphragm and a microphone. It reads the data, or reads the audio signals, and then shows it up either as a sound file or also analyzes it for this. Now, this same digital transformation, now this is really a classic example of a completely analog product gone digital. And then in that case, we can look at what were the driving factors, or what were the pain points with the completely analog device that were addressed with this. One was, for example, recording. An analog was just analog, it's done. Now you can record, store it, look at it later. You can do onboard analysis right there and then. The device itself can give feedback on what kind of heartbeat it's reading and things like that. And then you can have somebody else view it if it's also connected with communication channels. It doesn't have to be in front of you, but doctor can be remote and you can still have that diagnosis done. So this would be like a classic case, and we are seeing a lot of similar such products where traditionally it was a simple mechanical product, but that gets transformed into a digital version of it. And then the real question is, how do we keep the core aspects of it intact? So we shouldn't disturb that and make sure that that's definitely done. But then where are the real benefits of doing this digital transformation? Because just for the sake of digitalizing is not always helpful. Is there really a benefit to doing that? And there are some superfluous cases where, yeah, you can digitize it, but right now things work the way they are, and there's a reason why they have been doing it for the last decades or so, and let's continue with that and not always have this digital transformation that in every product.
Right. Mandar, your views? What
Sure.
typical
So-
consideration, especially if it comes to devices and others?
Right. So for the tech choices, typical considerations I have seen and I would also do are, the technology should allow simplification of the user experience. I mean, after all, that's why we are doing it, right? It's not for the developer to, have the wow factor that, okay, again. So I think technology should actually, we should choose something which allows that simplification. But even more specifically, something which allows continuous change, allows us to, so instead of bringing a Ferrari to, and then drive it at 5 miles an hour, we should really bring the appropriate scaled and appropriate complexity of the technology being used. It should, allow that continuous change, meet the time, the development time and the price point demands as well, because there are going to be some technologies, they may offer some very strong plus points, but a lot of times, as Chinmay was saying, getting to that market, getting to the pilot users is quite critical, and you may that will influence your technology choices as well. So, the time and price point for sure. And last point, which he mentioned very well, was the trade-offs have to be acceptable. There will likely be some trade-off, but a lot of times you'll have to choose so that whatever that flip side is acceptable in the newer scenario when you bring in that technology choice, right? So one term I remind myself when thinking about this is remain a little bit product, a little bit technology agnostic at the beginning. First, I mean, people now use this word empathy, right? But truly understand the patient problem or the physician problem. Little bit keeping the technology behind, and then bring the right, appropriate technology choices to the table instead of starting with some bias of, I want to use this tech, I want to use IoT or AI or whichever. They might very well be used, because one hidden factor there is always of the diagnostic quality of the data that they are going to give you. So a lot of times it's not really useful I mean, for an engineer, yes, it may throw out some data, but a physician has to really say that, yes, this is diagnostic quality, and I can go away from my earlier way of doing things, whether manual, and then this device or this new data which is going to be thrown out is of diagnostic quality and actually useful. So, I would sort of consider those. And coming to your second question, Balaji, so for a digital product, right? So I would sort of think from 3 or 4 dimensions. So one is it smart? Is it connected? Is it automated? And finally, for healthcare, is it secure, right? Safe to use and, takes care of patient safety. So those are sort of the dimensions of having a digital product: smart, connected, automated, secure.
Nice. And in your experiences, just to make the full cycle of the question around the digital transformation journey complete, in your experience, would you be able to highlight certain pitfalls and certain successes which you need to take care of as a starter in any such digital transformation journey? Mandar, what do you say? And just more tips for the people hearing today to find out how they can do it.
Right. So one I'm going to mention, which is both a pitfall, and if you do it right, it can be a success. It's the choice of the first problem in your overall digital transformation scenario, the choice of the first 1 or 2 problems that you select to solve. I'll explain it a bit. So not every problem, let's say if you spend $100 on it, will give you $1 back. There are some problems which are scale dependent. So they demand $1,000 to even start giving you some ROI. So you can be smart enough to choose the first problems which are at a scale where you can put in some funding into it. So I'm just using funding as a placeholder for effort, but you get my point that it's a non-linear phenomenon where if you choose it right, you can actually do a simpler one, a smaller one, and start to show an ROI, and that actually allows you to get the buy-in from all kinds of stakeholders, right up to the CIOs and the CEOs who are trying to drive the company and controlling the purse string, so to say, right? So this is one thing. If you sort of falter in that, sometimes it may happen that 2 years will go by and then you really can't show anything. So in your overall digital transformation journey, if you really think from that angle of how to choose the first few steps correctly, so that get that directionally correct, even if it is $1, but you are showing that, I'm in the positive, and then people will stand with you. So I think it's a little bit of a, what do you say, not exactly a technology problem, but it's a combination at the interface of technology and business both, which I think all of us need to do.
Understand. Thanks, Mandar. Chinmay, your view? What could be some pitfalls to take care of, and what could be some good successes to look for as a starter to make somebody feel comfortable that they can embark on digital transformation or digital product engineering for that matter?
Yeah, I would actually go back to what Mandar was saying a couple of minutes ago, that in any product innovation, I would start with taking some smaller bites. Mandar gave the example of starting with a skateboard and then progressing to a bicycle and a scooter and then a car. That each of these products is still solving the core patient need or the end user need, but they are doing it in the increasingly more efficient manner. But they are all doing it to some extent. So doing that step by step would be a real eye-opener, because in every step we are going to learn something from the users and then improve upon it to build those subsequent iterations. And so that's again, in a way, trying to directly build a car versus going step by step. That would be a pitfall, but then on the other hand, also an opportunity to go do it in a more systematic manner. And in some sense, for healthcare, it's a bit more challenging to apply because of the regulatory aspect of it. But where we see that, or where we have seen that quite often is, again, I'll give an example of a product in a very core, very specific healthcare domain that we had been working on for the last couple of years. And it was a physician-driven company, and they were building a device with a couple of sensors, heart rate, temperature, general patient vital parameters that we regularly see. And we are trying to optimize how many of these do we really need in that first iteration. And because with every sensor you add, it comes with its own, not only the battery life impact, but also the regulatory aspects and compliance aspects, calibration before launch and things like that. And they all just add up almost exponentially, because one additional sensor does not mean that much more. It's like a cascading effect down the line. So what are the way that we solved that problem was to go back to the clinical need and seeing, okay, for this healthcare domain, what's the most important thing that the doctors are looking for, and which parameters are really going to drive the most improvement in patient care if we include those sensors. Let's start with those very limited number, and then in version 2 and 3 we can add the remaining ones and truly make it a Ferrari or a limousine. But let's start with something that solves the bare minimum problem.
Right. No, well said. That brings me to the next poll question. What is the biggest challenge in any digital transformation journey? Is it technology? Is it participation and involvement from business? Or is it the entire aspect of cost, which is to be the biggest challenge, which is to be considered? Would love to hear the views from the audience for this poll question. The reason why this is important is, people get mixed up with digital transformation being just another technology project. And while it is, technology is the heart of it, there are multiple dimensions to be considered when you put together a business proposal, and you ensure that we are actually having people from various departments and groups come in and participate. That's why this poll question is important, and look forward to hearing what the audience has got to say. We'll wind down the question now, and we'll see what the answers are. And I think, again, on the expected lines, the primary driver is participation from business as a key, which comes out with 64%. Optimizing cost during transformation, because you're anyway letting go or removing inefficiencies and optimizing on the manual processes is there. That's second. And third, of course, technology doesn't go away, but it is not the criteria for deciding on a digital transformation journey. So that's what the poll question says, and that's what the audience feels. quickly we'll go over some questions to see how we can answer. I'll take some of these which are very straightforward to answer, right? How enhancements being managed upon digital products. Interesting to know from the medical world itself. So one of the key industries which is really taking on digital transformation right now is healthcare and the medical world. They are embarking on it for various reasons. One, the cost of the healthcare itself has to come down. Because of that, efficiencies need to improve both for, how do we make it more efficient, easy to be available, and so on. So that is a definitive way how the world is looking at. There's another question which has come: how do we successfully marry software with hardware so that the performance output of software is directly proportional to the output of hardware? Actually speaking, the question itself may have to be changed a little, according to me. The software which actually runs and gets the output of the hardware is actually supposed to get it exponential for the hardware, not linear. So the output of the hardware cannot be directly proportional to what the software can generate as output. Actually, the software should generate exponentially proportional to the output of what the hardware should be. That's what the intent of a digital product is and a digital journey is. So that is the question which is there. And I think the answer lies in the digital product journey itself, right? Why is that device used for? What is that device used for? Is it part of the digital journey itself? Is that the central part of the digital? I mean, so many questions come up, right? And one question from the audience, which I would like to raise it with Mandar and Chinmay, which is very interesting. And I think I'm sure a lot of people are thinking at is, how do you use old technology and rely on them to still migrate to a digital transformation, right? It's a very important question because this is something, and this will be the last question probably, which I'll take because we're running out of time. Chinmay and Mandar, I've come across situations where people are very scared of touching the backend. They're saying, boss, it is running for ages, let it run, be it the mainframe, be it some legacy systems which you have put into devices included, but still give me a digital transformation output. Right? It's a very, very pertinent question. How would you respond to that, Chinmay? What do you do in such situations?
No, absolutely. This is something that we have encountered almost in all the startups or projects where there is a legacy device and the need is to transform it or enhance it in a digital way. But almost always it's driven by some clinical need there. And it's never the case, or it has never successfully been the case, that you just do it for the heck of doing it. It really needs to be driven by, sure, there is a product that works right now in the analog space or in the just purely mechanical or hardware space, but there are some very fundamental things that are lacking. And if we transform it into the digital space, that is, add the sensors, start extracting out data from it, then we are truly going to get those benefits. And in a very typical case where we have seen these benefits is in terms of home patient care or in terms of ambulatory patient care. Typically, a lot of these vital parameter monitors or any type of these sensors, before, it always used to be take those readings once a month, once a week at that level. But now with technology, it's quite straightforward to do this at a much more micro level, that even every second you can take temperature reading. Mm-hmm. And often we have faced the reverse problem that, hey, do we even need the temperature every 1 second? We don't. Every hour is fine. Maybe even every 4 hours is fine. And where is that nice trade-off between, sure, we can put a lot of data in a tiny form factor, just keep recording everything, versus, okay, we don't really need that. Let's use that bandwidth that we have into something else and better leverage those resources that we have. Because at the end of the day, we are always fighting battery life versus device size. How long is that going to last? Is it a week or a month? Or do we burden the patient with recharging the device every couple of days? That leads to non-compliance and things like that. And then some of the other challenges in this same transformation have been on the security side. Oftentimes, and many of you have in the audience as well would know about some challenges with security, especially in things like Bluetooth. right? It's truly local, and it's very hard to completely have a seamless transfer of data. So that has been one of some of those challenges going for transforming physical products into more digital.
Understand.
Yeah, it comes down to optimization of all of these things.
I understand. Thanks, Chinmay. Mandar, your view?
Right. So coming to
It's like literally putting a
how-
lipstick on a pig, right? I mean, then sometimes figuring out how
Right,
to
right.
genuinely create that experience of digital, but still remain with the old because you believe in it and you have conviction on that.
True. So the way I would sort of try to converse and hopefully even convince somebody about it is, for a minute, not even think about whether that technology piece is legacy or we are bringing in something new. Little bit even keep it second. I would ask them to really focus on the value. And as you rightly pointed out, Balaji, if the value addition because of the new things, is it truly more than linear, right? It's exponential value add. That's, for example, something like software and added things that you can do with that data that brings it in. And in general, also understanding that you did it for certain reason, right? I mean, you had that legacy technology, you were doing something 20 years back because it allowed you to add certain value to the physician, to the patient. That's why you were doing it. You were not doing it because you were in love with that technology piece. So when you think of that transformation, I would steadfastly bring them sort of back to their core value prop, which is usually around the physician and patients, and then have them think through it that, okay, are we really married to the technology piece, or are we wanting to add value and make our patient and physician experience more more efficient, more cost effective, and then as a business also becoming more valuable. So I would sort of focus it always on value and let that guide our other choices. If it still tells me that maybe I should hold on to some earlier piece of tech, maybe there is a case for it.
Understand. No, very good. Thank you very much. There's one last question. I think I'll be able to respond myself. Difference between industry 4.0 and digital transformation. Lot of what is being spoken about in digital industry 4.0 actually is digital transformation. But a lot of people relate industry 4.0 not necessarily to a broader set, but typically related to manufacturing and production type of houses. But it talks about IoT, it talks about cloud, it talks about AI, ML. So a lot of things which are there in industry 4.0 do resonate with when we say that we are trying to get into digital transformation. But digital transformation can be even beyond, right? It could be like, for example, I was having a conversation with a customer this afternoon. It's just user experience. I need everything done. Everything is working fine. I just need it done by a click of a button on my mobile. It's as simple an initiative which they want, and they're calling it digital transformation, right? And you can't blame them for that, right? That's the know-how of what they believe digital transformation is. So that may not be in industry 4.0, but digital transformation for them means that way. But a lot of things of industry 4.0 is part of digital transformation and vice versa. With that, thank you very much for the nice conversations we've had with Chinmay and Mandar. Thank you, audience, for your questions and your participation and your patient hearing. Chinmay, thank you once again for taking time to be part of this conversation and with your insights and experiences being shared with all of us. Mandar, once again, thank you. You always amaze me with your knowledge and your intellect in regards to some of these aspects. So thank you both for a fantastic conversation and a discussion. Audience, thank you very much for being patient with us and for your questions. And the hosts and people who arranged this webinar, thank you very much for making this happen. Have a great evening, a great day ahead, and look forward to the next webinar once again. Thank you very much from all at GS Lab and GAVS. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for organizing.